Okay, folks, so what we're going to be doing for this project is we're just going to be making this graphic here. First, what you're going to do is download the project file, and when you open it up, you should see all of these parts laid out already for you in the Illustrator file. What we're going to work on first is we're going to be making the car. So go ahead and select all of the parts for the car. You can do this by using your black arrow, which is the selection tool. Just click in your pasteboard or the empty area, and then click and drag until that rectangle covers all the objects that we need. Then let go, and it will select them, and we can move them over to our canvas. So I'm just going to zoom in. The shortcut for zooming in and out is either Control or Command plus to zoom in. It's going to be Control or Command minus to zoom out. So first off, what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab our wheel wells. They should already be spaced far enough apart that we can eventually fit 2 doors in between them, but for right now we're just going to put them on the base of our car right here. We kind of want to put them more forward than back, so I'm just going to select them both and click and drag them upward. I want the center of the circles to line up with the bottom of the car. You can see when I've done that because Illustrator will make a magenta line appear to help me guide things into place. So I'm going to put my wheel wells about here. I want that first wheel well to be lined up with where the hood of my car bends to turn into the windshield. So about there. And then to make sure I've got the spacing right, I'm going to put my windows and doors on the car as well. So I'm going to grab my door first. It should already be grouped, so I'm just going to click and drag it over here. I'm going to place it on my car. And you can see I'm having a little bit of trouble making the bottom of my door align with the bottom of the car here. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to select both the door and the base of the car here. And I'm going to go to my Align panel. I usually keep them in this floating dock right here. But if you have trouble finding your Align panel off to the right, just go to Window and Align, and that will make the panel appear. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Align to. If you don't have these options, just click this hamburger menu right here and hit Show Options, and that will make them appear. I had to reselect my shapes because it wasn't letting me use this option right here. Now this option is the Align to Key Object option, and what that allows me to do is it lets me pick sort of a reference point that everything's going to be aligned to. Now right now the key object is the door. I want it to be the car here, so I'm just going to click once, and you can see that the car now has a bold blue line around it. That means that's now the key object. So then I'm just going to go to Vertical Align Bottom. That's the last option in the first row. And now I know the bottom of my door is aligned with the bottom of the car. So I want to add a second car door, and rather than trying to recreate this one, I'm just going to select it with my black arrow, and then I'm going to hold Alt or Option, and I'm just going to drag it over to create my duplicate. Now it's okay that this little corner here is being overlapped by the wheel well. That's fine. I actually kind of want that look. So I'm just going to leave those car doors here. Then I'm going to put my front windscreen in. The idea is this windscreen, the middle of this windscreen should line up with the door windows. And then I'm going to put my back windshield in as well. And you can tell that I've got everything lined up because of that guide there. And then make sure the edges of the windows are lined up with the edges of the door or of the car. And I want the spaces between the windows and the doors to be even, so I'm just going to select both of these doors, and I'm just going to nudge them over just a touch. There we go. Next is I'm going to grab my bumper, which is this gray shape here, and I'm going to move this up here, but you can see it's wanting to go behind my car. I want it to be in front of the car, so I'm just going to right-click, Arrange, Bring to Front. Then I'm going to move this up so that way the bottom of this shape lines up with the bottom of the car. But you can see that it's a little bit shorter than what I want because I want this bulge to be past the front here. So I'm just going to stretch it out just a tad on each end. There we go. So then I'm going to grab my light pink rectangle here and I'm going to move it. Again, we're having the issue where it's behind the car and I actually want it to be in front of the car. But I don't want to bring it all the way to the front because I still want it to be behind my windows and doors. So there's two ways that we can move it. We can either do right click, arrange, bring forward, and we just keep doing that over and over, or you can hit Control or Command right bracket and just keep hitting that right bracket until it appears in front of the base of the car. Now something else I want to do is I want to align the top of this shape with the top of the car here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select both of them. I'm going to select Align to Key Object. Make sure the car is the key object by just clicking on it once. And then I'm going to do Vertical Align Top. And now it's just a matter of moving this over until these two corners line up with the edge of the car. And it might be a little tricky to do that. If you need to, you can nudge things with your arrow keys. There we go. That's close enough. Okay, I'm going to hold off on moving my trailer hitch at the moment. Right now, I'm going to kind of clean up this a bit more so that way all the shapes are clipped the way I need them to be. Now, for what I'm about to do, I actually want to select the wheel wells here. And I'm going to right click, arrange, bring to front, because I don't want any of the bumper showing up on top of the wheel well. So now that I have all that sorted out, I'm going to select all of my parts up here. And then I'm going to go to my Pathfinder panel. If you can't find that off to your right, just go to Window, Pathfinder. And then I'm going to go to the second row of options and I'm going to hit that first button, which is Divide. And then you can see that it has cut up our shapes where they intersected with another shape. Now something it also does is it actually turns everything into a group. I don't want that right now, so I'm just going to right click, hit Ungroup. And I want to get rid of the bottom halves of the wheel well here. I just want it to show up where the actual car is. So I'm just going to select both of those and hit either delete or backspace on your keyboard. Then I'm going to go in. You can kind of see that the wheel well got cut up into a bunch of different parts because of where it was overlapping with other shapes. So I'm just going to select all of those. And I'm going to go back to the Pathfinder and I'm going to hit this very first option in the top row called Unite. And you can see it's made it into one big shape again. So I'm going to do that again for this one. I'm going to do that for the bumper. And then I'm going to get rid of the corners here. And that should be all I need to fix on here. So now I can grab my trailer hitch and just add it onto the end here. So next is we need to put some wheels on our vehicle here. So I'm going to go back up to my pasteboard and I'm going to grab all the parts I need for the tire. And I'm first going to focus on the rubber. So the parts we're using for the rubber are these two pieces right here. You're going to select both of them. We're going to go back to Align. And we are going to use the horizontal Align center. And then we're going to use the vertical Align center. Alright, so the idea of this long skinny piece here is we're going to use that to create a tread on our wheel. So I'm going to select that, right click, transform, rotate, and I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees. And rather than hitting OK, I'm going to hit copy. That way it will keep the original and the new one I just made. So I'm going to select both of these. And then I'm going to group them. You can group something by hitting Command or Control G, or right clicking and hitting group. It's just going to make it easier to grab these as we make more and more spokes around our tire here. So with both of those selected, I'm going to right click, transform, rotate again. This time we're going to rotate 45 degrees. Hit copy again. You want to select the copy and the original. We're going to right click, transform, rotate. This time we're going to do 22.5 for the angle. Hit copy again. Then we're grabbing the copy and the originals, and we're going to rotate it one more time. We're going to rotate it 11.25 and hit copy. Now we've got a nice little tread around the circle, and what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to select all of these pieces, and then I'm just going to go back to my Pathfinder, and I'm going to hit this first option, which is Unite. So now it's just one big shape. Now I want to layer my rubber with a hubcap, so I'm just going to select all three of these items, and I'm going to go to Align, and we're going to do the horizontal and vertical align centers again. Now you can see I have the issue where the rubber is on top of the hubcap. I don't want that, so I'm going to right click, arrange, send to back, and now everything's in the right order. And I'm just going to make sure that all of these items are grouped. Again, just right click group or Command/Control G. Next, I'm going to move the tire up onto my car. Having that issue where it's going behind the car, I want it in front, so I'm just going to go to right click, arrange, bring to front. And then I want this center to line up with the bottom of the car here, so I'm just going to move that up until it tells me. There we go. Sometimes the guides can be a little bit too helpful, but the idea is I want the center of the tire to line up with the center or with the bottom of the car. The idea is you want an even amount of space in the wheel well here. And then to make my other tire, I'm just going to hold Alt or Option on my keyboard and make a duplicate and put it in about the same spot on the other side. So now we've got our car. What we're going to make next is we're going to make the cargo that goes on top of the car and the rack that goes on top of the car. So I'm just going to go up here, find the section labeled cargo, bring it down to my canvas. And I want to add a bit of a slant to my cargo rack so that way it looks a little less boxish. So I'm going to switch over to my white arrow, which is the direct selection tool. And I'm going to select this left top anchor point. And then with my arrow key, I'm going to hit the right arrow key 4 times. That way it creates a slant. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I'm going to select the anchor point on the top right side. And we're going to go to the left 4 times. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Next, I'm going to grab these little pegs here. And I'm going to rotate them so that way they go vertical. So I'm going to hit right click, transform, rotate, and we're going to rotate them 90. Is that what I want? Yes, it is. So then I'm going to hit OK. And now it's just a matter of putting these in their spot. I'm going to try and move these so that way this edge lines up with that top corner there. There we go. Then I'm going to put my box on here. Then I want this to be a sleeping bag, so I'm just going to select all 3 of these objects, and I'm going to use my align options to center everything. So I'm going to use horizontal, then vertical, And then I'm going to group the shapes together. And I'm just going to put this on my rack. And now I want to tie my stuff down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my line segment tool. If you don't see it, look for either the arc or spiral tool and then right click on it and you should see the line segment tool listed in there. And then I'm going to use my line segment tool to create my first rope. So I'm just going to make a segment right there. Now you can see nothing initially happened, so I'm going to switch to my eyedropper tool. The shortcut for that is I. I'm going to grab the color from the rack here. And then I'm going to go down to this corner here and I'm going to switch the fill and stroke colors. And you can see it applies a color to the stroke now. Something else I'm going to do is I'm going to go up to the top here. If you don't have this top toolbar, just go to Window, Workspace, Essentials Classic, and it should appear. And I'm going to click on Stroke. Another way you can get to this menu is if you go to Properties, these options should be in that panel as well. But you're going to click on the word Stroke either way. Click on the word itself. And then I'm going to change the cap on it so that way it has a rounded cap. I just kind of like how that looks a little bit nicer when I'm doing segments that are supposed to look like an object. It just looks a little less abrupt. Then I'm going to switch back to my line segment tool. And I'm going to add about 4 ropes total to this. The idea is you want to make it look like it's not going to move around. I'm going to add one there, one here. And then one here. There we go. Once I'm happy with it, I'm just going to select everything, group it. Then I'm going to move it over to my car here. Now I actually want these pegs to go behind the car. So I'm going to right click, arrange, send to back. And you can see the pegs will disappear behind the car. And then I'm just going to place this like towards the back. Nudge it with my arrow keys. And there we go, we have our car now. So before I start to make my background, I'm just going to select everything and then hit Command G or Control G to group it all together. And I'm going to throw my car over here. Next is I'm going to work on the background. So I'm going to grab this yellow rectangle and the bluish green rectangle. I'm going to move them down here. I'm going to move the yellow one off to the side for right now. And I'm going to move this bluish green rectangle here. I think I'm going to actually make this just a tad taller because the idea is this is going to be on a road and we're going to add yellow stripes down the bottom edge here. So I'm going to add enough that looks like my car can fit on half the road. Then I'm going to grab this yellow rectangle, which is actually a really thick stroke or a path. Then I'm going to move it up here. And an easy way to add a bunch of dashes or a bunch of rectangles is to make a stroke like this. And then we're going to click on the word stroke up here. And we're going to check or hit the check mark for dashed line. And you want your dash to be around 101 points, but you can see as you mess with this number, it will kind of add more dashes to the arrangement. I'm just going to leave this at 101. This is also where you would add arrowheads if you wanted to add that to a line. We're not going to worry about that right now, so I'm just going to leave the dash at 101. And then the perspective for my lines here seem a little bit off compared to the car. So what I'm going to do is I actually want to modify these a little bit. And first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Object, Path, and Outline Stroke. What that's going to do is it's going to transform it from a path into a shape that we can edit. So with these selected, I'm going to go to my properties panel. Again, if you can't find it, off to your right, just go to window and properties. And then I'm going to hit these three little dots right here. And you'll see this like trapezoid or like this slanted rhombus right here. That's your shear option. What we're going to do is we want these lines to kind of be slanted towards the right. So that way they look a little bit more flat on the road rather than facing us. I'm going to set this to a negative 140. And then you'll see it added a slant to all my shapes here. I'm also going to lower the height a little bit, maybe by about half. There we go. I'm going to move my car a little bit more up. Next is I'm going to grab a rectangle here and we're going to work on our sky. So I'm just going to make a really big rectangle. It's not a big deal if it goes outside of our canvas, because when we go to export this as a PNG or even a PDF, it will only save what we have on the artboard. So obviously we don't want our sky to be this bright yellow color. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my gradient panel. You can either find it on your right hand side or go to window and gradient. And then to apply the gradient to the fill, one, make sure you have the fill box selected. You can tell it's selected because it's on top. If the stroke is selected, it'll look like that. So I've got the fill selected, and then you can click either up here or on the slider bar to activate the gradient. Now I want my gradient to go from white to like a pale light blue. So I'm just going to double click on this slider here to bring up a color panel. I'm going to use my hamburger menu to switch color profiles. And I'm just going to make a pale blue here. There we go. And I want to change the angle of my gradient because I actually want it to go from white up top down to blue on the bottom. So I'm going to set this to 90. And if you have it like mine where the blue's on top and white's on the bottom, you can actually hit this button right here and it will switch your gradient around. So that's just a fast way to edit and mess with it. So before I'm done with the gradient panel, I'm going to send this rectangle to the back to see how the gradient looks when it's behind the road. I think I might grab this little diamond here to make the blue travel a little higher. There we go. Try and get something that's a little similar to this. Okay, next, so I'm going to go back up here and you'll see this black path that we have set up. What we're going to do is we are going to use this as a guide for our text. So I'm going to put it in a general place. That way it kind of looks like it's flowing from the car. I might actually make it a touch smaller. And then we're going to go up and turn the stroke off on it so that way it's invisible. Because I don't want my text to be underlined, I'm just going to use this as a guide for the text to follow. Then I'm going to switch over to my type tool, which is found off to your left. Then I'm going to hover over this path, and you should see your cursor change when you're hovering over the path. And I'm just going to click once on it, and you'll see it adds text to the line. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to type in "see you soon." I'm going to highlight everything, and then I can pick my font from this panel here. Where it says fonts, that's going to be everything that's installed on your computer. If you click, let me just clear my filter here. If you click on Find More, this is going to be all of the fonts you can get through Adobe. If you see a font you like and you want to add it to your collection or you want to use it, just click on this cloud right here, and it will activate and be added to your account. If you are having trouble searching through everything, or you have an idea of what you want to use but you don't want to dig through all the fonts you have, you can actually go up to the top here where it says filters, click this first button here, and there's a bunch of options you can pick from. Like if you want a more decorative font, click this one. If you don't want a font that has any serifs on it, you can click that first option here. If you want a super thick font, you can click on that. There's a whole bunch of things that you can pick from. Now, I already know the font I want to use, and it is called Professor Minty. And then I'm just going to make this a lot bigger. Now you can kind of see that my font or my words start at the top of this hump here instead of the start of the path. So what I'm going to do is I actually want to scoot everything over a bit. The way I do that is I grab my direct selection tool, and you'll see this blue vertical line. Your cursor should change when you hover over it. Just click on that and then drag it over to where you want your text to start. And then while I'm here, I'm going to change the color of my font. You can also add a stroke to it if you want by going to this menu. I'm just going to leave mine with a red fill. Then I'm just going to up my font size a tad. There we go. I'm going to move this here. There we go. Next is I want to add some leaves kind of flying off from the car here. So if you go up top, you'll see there's already a leaf there. We're going to select that leaf and we're going to turn it into a symbol. So that way we can use our symbol sprayer to quickly add a whole bunch of leaves at one time. So I'm going to grab my leaf and then I'm going to go to the symbols panel. You can either find it off to your right or go to Window, Symbols. Then with that leaf selected, you're going to hit the New button. The New button is a square with a plus sign. Just hit that. Give it a name. And then I changed the export type to graphic. To be honest, it doesn't really matter unless you're going to import it later to Flash or animate. I'm going to leave it as a dynamic symbol. That way, if I ever want to edit the design of the leaf, it will edit every instance that that leaf is used. Then I'm going to hit OK. And it's now been turned into a symbol. So I'm going to deselect it. I'm going to move back down to my canvas, and then I'm going to find my symbol sprayer. It's this tool right here. And if you double click on it, that gives you the options to change the size. You can also change the intensity. That means how many characters it throws out at one time. Then if you're using a pressure sensitive device, you can actually hook that control to the pressure in the device. I'm just going to leave it at fixed. And then I'm just going to spray some leaves on here. I'm going to try this. There we go. Okay. So you can see we've added leaves, but they look very uniform and unrealistic and boring. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to where my symbol sprayer tool was. And if you right click on it, you will see a bunch of these different tools here. If you click on this little sidebar with the arrow here, that will unhook it from your dock. So you can just have a floating panel with all the different tools. Now the main tools you guys will probably be using for this particular project is the shifter tool, maybe the scruncher, the sizer, the spinner, and the stainer tool. So like these first 5 tools are what you'll be using for this project. The screener tool, what that does is that changes the opacity. We don't want any transparent leaves. And the styler tool will add different styles to different characters. What we want is we basically just want to move some of them around with the shifter. We want to change some of the sizes with the sizes. We want to rotate them with the spinner, and we might want to change the colors of a few of them with a stainer. So first off, I'm going to use the sizer tool to kind of vary the sizes of my leaves. Now, if you just tap it normally, it will make things bigger. If you hold Alt or Option, it will make things smaller. Just go ahead and just resize some of these leaves so that way they're not all uniform. And if you need to, you can always double click on the tool And that will give you the option to make a smaller brush or change the intensity. And I think I'm actually going to add a couple more leaves. There we go. Then I'm going to use my shifter to kind of move some of them around. I want to make sure I don't have any overlapping with my words here. Then I'm going to use my spinner to kind of rotate some of them around so that way they're not all pointing in the same direction. And I'm just going to keep messing with these until I get a look I like. The idea is you usually don't want like two right next to each other pointed in the same way or at the same angle. Then I'm going to switch over to my stainer tool, and the way you stain your symbols is you just go up to the top here and pick a color you want. You can also go over to your color panel and then just pick a color that you want to stain it with and just click on it and it will stain that symbol. If you want to take the color out of something, just hold Alt or Option and it will go back to the original color. So go ahead and pick like 2 or 3 colors to stain your leaves with. For this fall look, I usually like to have like yellows and oranges in there. There we go. And that is our finished project. If you want, you can kind of shift things around. Like I think I'm going to kind of move these just a touch. Once you're happy with it, save it, put your name on the file, and then turn it in on canvas.